everything changes.
Alright, let's get into the first lesson with a brief overview of Total Farm Marketing as a company and what we've uncovered over the years. So let me set the stage as to why Total Farm Marketing and me, Mike Rush, are qualified to talk and teach on how to become more effective at marketing or managing your revenue. Quite frankly, we are professionals with decades of experience. Total Farm Marketing by Stuart Peterson has over 35 years of history providing strategic marketing advice and guidance to producers. We have a family of companies with a continuum of different service offerings that are designed to fit different producers' needs. Obviously, over the years, a wide industry presence and a knowledge base with a seasoned professional staff, a lot of deep-rooted knowledge and expertise. Myself, I have over 2 decades of personal experience in working with producers. I focus on helping them identify obstacles and constraints that are holding them back, and then looking at what works and what doesn't work and helping them find the right method to increase their ability. I have a passion to really bring this awareness and help foster change. Now look, I know I can't make someone change their views on marketing. That's not my goal, to force a change. But when a grower or producer has figured and decided they want to look for something different, I love to be involved and help them with the right proven steps. And a lot of it does center around behavior modification. Okay, over the years, we have intentionally studied producer marketing habits. We've analyzed the approaches and the outcomes, and we've identified the habits and validated the best practices of those most successful and competent marketers, and those being value and progression and comfort when it comes to the task of marketing. Now, we want to bring this awareness and knowledge to others, and hopefully that's why you're watching this series. Let me share a little bit of this research real quick on the awareness studies and what we've learned. Now, through some direct survey efforts a number of years ago and then continued individual conversations with producers up through the current day, we have assessed that around 90% of all producers indicate they're stressed out and frustrated when it comes to marketing. So much so that some of them daily or weekly, as they try to approach some marketing decisions, are just stressed out and can never find the right connection. Some have had some very bad past experiences, 1 or 2, maybe more, and are really soured and almost opposed to wanting to learn or even think about marketing. There's others that just avoid it like the plague, maybe not even with personal experiences, but just is not even on their radar. Okay. Now, by contrast, the remaining roughly 10% of producers and growers, they indicate that they're very engaged with their marketing, comfortable, they feel rewarded by it. So much so that many of them indicate they would not be in the strong position they are at that time if they hadn't been engaged in good marketing. So we also go on to ask some deeper questions to understand how each one of these producers does approach marketing when they are making those decisions. And what we found is that group of 90% that are stressed out and frustrated, as a group, all have very similar habits and approaches and mindsets and attitudes towards marketing. And that 10% group of very confident and engaged marketers, they also, as a group of 10%, have very similar habits and approaches and mindsets towards marketing. And yet they're night and day different between the two groups. So that was kind of the question, but also the answers, is what is this group doing differently that's actually producing better results and more comfortable and confident results? And then is that something that can be transferred to the other group? Can we learn how to use those same approaches and habits? And the answer is yes, and that's why we're here. So through all that research, we've created a marketing assessment process to help growers identify what's holding them back and maybe what level of help or type of education may be best suited for them. And we offer that as a free assessment and a guide. And actually, it's a very rewarding exercise. I highly recommend you reach out to me anytime through or after this series, after you watch this series, and request to do a free marketing assessment. It's very rewarding and very powerful. So let's dig into the first lesson and the first concept, which is that cognitive awareness. Okay, so understanding our human condition and our cognitive behavior, the process to improve really needs to start with understanding this cognitive behavior and our cognition. So let's define it. By definition, cognition is the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. So just for a reference, and we won't get too far off in the weeds here, more high level, but there are four main areas or cognitive skills that our brain revolves around: perception, attention, memory, and logical reasoning. And again, you can do some deeper research on this if you want to, but just as a stage setter, these are kind of the four main areas. Now, this is how our brain works and how we build our beliefs and our actions. While it is important and good, there's also one very powerful factor that can cloud our cognitive reasoning, and that is our emotions. And of course, our emotions are what makes us human. We can't just turn them off. It's who we are. But we need to understand that these emotions oftentimes end up producing filters for the information that we allow into our brains. Now, to build on this, it's also important that we need to come to terms with the fact that by nature, as humans, we have a tendency to want to be right. It's kind of who we are. And that brings in the element of confirmation bias. Now, that's not a new term. I'm sure you've heard it before. Yet we really need to understand it, especially in the scope of marketing and managing revenue. By definition, confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or strengthens our own personal beliefs or opinions. So basically, it's a type of cognitive bias. It's a filter that as we look at the world and information, filters things in or out based on our current beliefs and opinions. So here's another way of looking at this. And remember, confirmation bias is very strong and deep-rooted in areas like political or religious views, lifestyle or cultural differences, any topic that has more than one drastically different philosophy. Okay, so if we look at this picture, what we see looking through binoculars or through our lens and our filters, of course you have facts that are confirming your beliefs and what you believe on the blue side, on the right side. And then each day, objective facts and information come at you all different ways and times. Of course, though, what we end up seeing are only those facts that really align with our current core beliefs. So what happens, of course, is we end up with a more of a narrow focus, and truthfully, a lot of those objective facts that may not fit our opinions, we don't even see or notice. Okay, they end up kind of getting just lost, and that can be good or bad. Now, to bring this in perspective, think of conversations you've had with someone over the years who has had a very opposite view or belief than you. Now, how many of those conversations turned into arguments? Well, if you're like me, quite a few of them. But analyze how those conversations actually played out. More than likely, we can't even recall a single structured point that the other person made to support their belief or their view because it got filtered out by our bias filters. Now, sure, maybe a sharp word or an aggressive comment set us off, but we really didn't pay much attention to the full explanation because we don't even allow ourselves to. It's part of our embedded human nature. In addition, many of our filters and biases have really been set for us. All right, we pick them up from our environment and our upbringing. So think of it this way: when we are born, coming into this world naked and afraid, we have zero beliefs or biases. We're a blank slate. We learn a majority of them from our parents and our providers, from our environment and our upbringing. Now, years and decades of being influenced can create some deeply embedded beliefs and opinions. Some serve us very well. Others may really be limiting us. Many we don't even know we have because they've been instilled in us from the beginning and we haven't really thought about them. So here's an awareness point I want to stress. Confirmation bias by itself, how we look at something and can see something different than somebody else sees it, is neither good or bad. It all depends on the context or the situation in play. Yet, by being aware and retraining ourselves to broaden our filters and listen to facts and opinions outside our normal view or focus, with the intent, of course, and the purpose to gain deeper knowledge and understanding and advance ourselves, well, that can really help us and be beneficial, especially when it comes to something as important to an agricultural producer as managing their farm revenue. Okay, to recap, we all deal with and use confirmation bias. For many of us, it goes unnoticed, and there's many areas of life it can be very beneficial, right? Giving us conviction and strong resolve. In other areas, it may be more neutral or inconsequential. And then in other areas still, it may be very limiting and causing us to be ill-prepared or even at a disadvantage at times. In business, if we limit ourselves on new ideas and focuses, we are often limiting our progression. Think of a producer who still runs his operation like he did back in the 80s, today in 2020, right? He hasn't adjusted or took advantage of any of the technology advancements. Think of how well that producer is actually able to stay in the game. You know, how efficient is he? Not very much. Now, how would you view that producer if he was your neighbor? Okay, here's a professional tip. Hashtag don't let yourself be limited by your biases, right? Remember this, every marketing year, every year holds unpredictable opportunities for fortune as well as for despair with the price that you can receive for your production. So being more open-minded, being more aware is really what's going to help you gain that next advantage. So as we wrap up this session, I'm going to ask you to reflect on how confirmation bias may be limiting your overall or impacting your overall marketing decisions. Think about that. Think about confirmation bias, what we talked about, and ask yourself, how is this maybe impacting my overall marketing decisions? And of course, in the end, maybe my overall livelihood and comfort with marketing. Okay, we've concluded our first lesson. In the next module, we'll talk about identifying constraints that are holding you back from more effective revenue management and what those constraints are and how to go about overcoming them. Okay, that is a wrap for this first module. I thank you for allowing me to be with you on this journey, and I look forward to the future lessons. Please reflect on how that confirmation bias may be impacting your revenue management decisions. Our contact information will be on the next slide, so please reach out with questions or for help, and certainly send me any feedback. Until next time, be safe, be well, and be mindful of those cognitive behaviors.
Everything changes.